Welcome to Loftside Bantr, and on today's show we get into the NBA Finals, we get into pretty much everything NBA. We look at the Celtics and what moves they're going to make, and we look at the Knicks coaching situation, and then the overall game as a whole, the whole product of the NBA. I have in Dan O'Keefe, who you've met previously on one episode, and then a good friend of ours, Ian Grotenhuis, will be joining us. We've known each other for roughly 30 years, so these conversations that you're going to hear with us, we've had for the last 3 decades. Very great insight and great chemistry between the three of us, so it's really a great listen. So we'll have that for you today. You can find all the stuff that is Loftside Bantr on www.loftsidebanter.com. That's loftsideBantr.com. The email address, as always, is loftsidebanter@gmail.com. Please like, subscribe, follow, anything that you can to help support. We are on Apple, iHeartRadio, Spotify. Now we're on Pandora. And then there's a whole bunch of other ones that you can find podcasts at, and we're on that as well. So just search Loftside Bantr. Pretty much if you go to Google and just search Loftside, that's going to come up. So again, thank you everybody for the support. We'll get into that countdown and get right into our interview.
We are on in 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2.
Hello and welcome back to Loftside Bantr, and today is an exciting day for me because I get to interview two of the most knowledgeable basketball people that I know. I've known them almost my entire life. Whether that's a good thing or bad thing, we'll figure that out as we kind of go along. But we bring back Dan O'Keefe, who was on with us before. Dan, how are you doing today?
I'm loving life, man. It's all good. Very happy to be here. Thanks for having me back.
See, you're the guinea pig for all this stuff because the first one we actually didn't save at all. So now you get to be, you're the one I toss out there when I need to test equipment. So, and then other than that, we also have another special guest, Ian Grotenhuis, who is one of the more knowledgeable basketball people on this planet that is undiscovered. So I'm discovering him here on this show. So Ian, how have you been?
I'm great. I am humbled by that intro. You give me way more credit than I deserve. But I'm very happy to be here.
Perfect.
Let's do this.
Perfect. I appreciate you both for being here. And so we're going to talk NBA. We're going to talk a little bit about the Celtics. We'll sprinkle in some Knicks and stuff like that. Then we're going to look at kind of how the NBA is shaped now and what we think maybe could change in the near future. So right now we'll start with the NBA Finals. For either one of you, what is your biggest takeaway right now? The series is 2-2. The Pacers were up 2-1. The Thunder won last night on the road. So we have a series for what seemed like two small market teams maybe a lot of people wouldn't care about. We seem to have had a pretty good 4 games of this final so far. So what do you guys think so far overall?
Look, I think my biggest takeaway is that sometimes it's not the team with the most talent. Obviously, assuming that health is equal, right, for both teams, you have to kind of just assume that's the same. But I mean, it's not always the most talent. It's about the hottest team at that point in time. Look, Indy clearly has less talent, like top end talent, but they're staying in this thing because their just team cohesion is some of the best I've seen in a long time. I think they kind of remind me of the 2020, bubble Miami Heat, which, were a decent team, probably a 50-win team that season, if you extrapolate for how many games they actually played, but they would have probably run rated to a 50-win team or so. But then the playoffs started, and they just gelled at the right time, and they just played way more than the sum of their parts. And I think we're so accustomed to the NBA being a superstar league and that superstars, get you to the finals. But Indy, and look, they may be a one-off case here, but they don't really have a superstar, and they're tied 2-2 with one of the most dominant teams that's ever played in the NBA. So that's just kind of my biggest takeaway, is that the hottest team at that time can go really far.
Dan, what's your biggest takeaway?
Yeah, I'll piggyback on what Ian said as far as the sexiness of the super teams and the superstars isn't there this year. But I think the return of boring basketball, which to diehard fans like Ian and myself is really the fundamentals of it. Defense is back, right? Seeing all the forced turnovers, all the blocks, all the steals. Depth is back. Veteran coaching is important again. The NBA draft has made a comeback just from this finals alone. Seeing what you can do with homegrown talent. So I've really been more into this finals than I have any of probably the past 4 or 5 years, just because the defense is there. Obviously they're still shooting a lot of 3-pointers and things like that. But like Ian said, it's just, you're seeing teamwork make a comeback. And a lot of that too is to coaching as well, veteran coaching. So honestly, fundamental basketball fans like us, our age, millennials, are getting kind of a throwback to how the game was before everything became so top heavy. So it's been refreshing to see, and super competitive games. Last night took me by surprise, but every single game has been must-see TV for me.
Now, I have made some comments in previous episodes, and I'm not trying to jinx any team or anything else like that, but if the Thunder, who had come out, and Ian, as you had mentioned, were one of the more dominant teams this year, if they win these finals, is this going to be the worst version of an NBA champion the Thunder put out there? Because they still have all of these picks, they still have all of these assets that they can go out and get players and everything else. Is this a team that is built this way, and that maybe the NBA can switch to that instead of the super teams as we're mentioning? Do we think that this is going to change how teams build now? Because neither one of these teams are in the luxury tax. They haven't paid a penny in luxury tax, whereas teams like the Knicks and the Celtics paid boatloads of money. So do we think this is going to change how teams operate?
I don't think so. I mean, look, what OKC has done is just a absolute masterclass in team building, in drafting, making savvy trades. I mean, they've really hit a home run on every single personnel decision in the last 5 years. I mean, Sam Presti has literally just made everybody else look like fools. And so, but I don't think it's a new way of team building. It's just he's done it so well, right? I mean, they basically did what the 76ers did, a decade ago in the process, except that, Sam Presti and the rest of the OKC brass have the balls to see it through. They didn't kind of hijack it 3/4 of the way through and then all of a sudden try to pivot to win, maybe prematurely. I mean, this thing's just been an organic kind of, renaissance of this team where, yes, you have that one foundational player that you get by trading Paul George, in SGA, but all their draft picks have been sound. Their trades have been great. They've done the normal way of team building, but they've just done it so well. I guess that's how I'll put it.
Dan, what do you think? Do you think this changes anything as far as organizations going forward?
Well, I think it's only time will tell to see if other teams are going to be taking the Thunder's lead in that organic growth that Ian was referencing there. It's been amazing what they've done so many times over the past 12 years. We've thought that the Thunder had to blow up and completely rebuild, and somehow, some way, they've just organically, created the best team in the NBA here with the best teamwork. I think things will change eventually, though. And I keep going back to the draft, but it's crazy to me. I mean, if you were a GM right now, which team would you least want to take control of right now. If it's not Phoenix, Phoenix is up there. And they just dumped, all of their picks in order to get one guy, in his mid-30s who's now asking to leave in Beal too. So, it's like I said, it's been so refreshing from all angles for me to see these two small market teams in the league based on how they've built and how they've got here. And will things change? Not right away. But we're going to see, what happens, what unfolds over the next few years, and hopefully more teams will take that approach. I think it's better for the game.
Yeah, I will say one thing that I've also noticed, just for I think how Indiana has actually stayed in this, despite not having the top end star power that OKC does, is that I think there's real value in having so many creators on your team. When you think of Halliburton, you think of Nembhard. Siakam can create off the dribble. McConnell off the bench, he makes things happen. Like there's so many guys that can create something out of nothing. And the other thing I'll just say is that the one thing that those four guys have in common on Indiana is that they're all extremely low turnover type of players. And when I look at what OKC has done this year, I mean, I don't even think OKC has a very good offense to speak of. They won because they almost always won the possession battle every game. They would commit like 4 fewer turnovers than their opponents almost every game, right? They win by forcing other teams to turn the ball over. Well, you can't really do that against Indiana because they have so many guys that take care of the ball and have, they're all stellar assist to turnover ratio kind of guys. So I think that's just one of the things I've noticed just stylistically as I watched this series is that what was a dominant regular season defense for OKC, forcing a ton of turnovers, they're starting to see some cracks in that with this super careful Indiana team that just doesn't turn the ball over.
Yeah, going through the playoffs and looking at everything that was kind of happening, Indiana obviously could keep themselves close in most games and then kind of take that fourth quarter and really, outpace different players, different teams and stuff like that. So it's interesting to see them going up against, like you said, a kind of a shutdown defense that OKC has had and still be able to come out with wins, both on the road and at home so far. Who has surprised you in this series, either positively or negatively? We can do either team, doesn't matter.
Dan, go ahead.
Well, I'm going to contradict myself here a little bit, talking about how refreshing it's been to see all this teamwork and depth and things like that. But I've honestly been just expecting Halliburton to emerge more as a leader throughout the series. And, to Ian's credit, he's protecting the ball. But I saw a stat pop up yesterday, and it may not be accurate. You can certainly fact check me, but Halliburton has not attempted a free throw in this series.
He hadn't until the fourth quarter of yesterday's game. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's unbelievable. That is absolutely unreal. So I don't know if it's just a lack of. He's a playmaker, but I just don't think that he's emerged. And I know that underrated comments and things like that, or overrated, throughout the season. But I was really expecting him to emerge and really combat Shea there as far as just offensively. I think he's averaging like 16 or 17 in the first 4 games, which is pretty wild. Maybe 7 assists. Ian will correct me, but I've just been surprised that both Siakam and Halliburton haven't really emerged as a clear leader of that team. It's been amazing to see the depth, Nembhard and all those guys. But yeah, it's just I was expecting more from Halliburton, and it's still an even series with plenty of ball to play. So maybe I'll be surprised, but I was expecting more from him.
So let me ask you both this then. So are you on board with this overrated comment, or do you kind of take his side, and do you disagree?
I kind of got into the specifics of that, where it really wasn't that many players that said that he was overrated, and it turned out they didn't release any names for who said what or anything, but I have a feeling it had to be where Halliburton made the USA team over some people. And I think that had something to do with it, but it wasn't a huge number of players that had mentioned him. It just so happened the percentage worked out that he was the largest part. And you can see some things in his game where you go, okay, that's probably something that needs to be improved, but he can take a game over. He can do all of the things that you need him to do. It's just, I don't know if he's at that level of consistently game changer. Like, he has big moments, but I don't think he has a consistent game changer thing. SGA, we've seen it. We've also seen that he can score 3 points in the fourth quarter and completely disappear at times too. But it's tough for me to say whether I think he's overrated. I think he's a very good player. I don't know if he's necessarily tier 1 quite yet. I'm talking about Halliburton. I don't know if he's quite tier 1 yet.
Yeah, I'll go on the record and just say that he's I think he's overrated. Look, anyone that considers him a superstar, you needs to have, their sanity checked. I don't even know if he's like on that tier 2 level of like a Jaylen Brown or something. I mean, I just think he's like a Jason Kidd without the defense, right? Like he's a great playmaker and he's got good size and he can occasionally shoot it really well. But I can't even count the number of games that I checked the box score the next day and he had like 6 points on like, 2 of 10 shooting and like 2 assists, and that's it. And he wouldn't even play because he wasn't making any impact. I just think if you're a superstar or even a tier 2 guy, you're making an impact like almost every night. And I think he has just too many games where he just disappears and does absolutely nothing. So yeah, I think he's overrated.
Coming into the series, though, I mean, the box score doesn't always tell the whole story. Coming into the series, he sent some amazing teams home. He was closing everybody. So, yeah, you're going to see the 6 points, the 12 points, the 14 points. But coming into this series, I know you said you're going to have your, anybody should have their sanity checked, thinking he's a superstar. But you can't tell me you were scratching your chin coming into game 1 against the Thunder. I mean, we all were.
I don't know. So something about it just seems a little fluky. I don't know. And look, this isn't like, you can't really put a statistic on this, but I just think he's just kind of a phony. Like he's not genuine. Like, the whole like racing behind the 3-point line to try and do the Reggie Miller thing. First of all, he had a foot on the line. It wasn't even a 3, right? So I don't know. It's just stuff like that. He thinks he's better than he is. Look, he's fun to watch. He makes incredible passes, but I don't know. I'm not there yet on calling him a top tier player.
Yeah, the whole discussion of what a superstar is and stuff like that. We could spend hours on that because I'm sure we all have difference of opinion. I think there's only a handful of superstars in the league anymore. Outside of the going out, the Kevin Durant's, the LeBrons, all, you want to keep putting him in there, that's fine. But I mean, I wouldn't even be able to say that he's a superstar. That's for sure. But no, he's exciting to watch. And Dan, to your point, I mean, you see him hit these shots and send teams home. That is great. It's so inconsistent at times. And then to Ian's point is, maybe he thinks he's better than he is, and he does all this stuff, and he's exciting. Don't get me wrong; it's exciting basketball. It's just, yeah, maybe he's just not quite there, and maybe he doesn't get there.
He leaves you wanting more. That's the thing.
I can agree with that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So with the series at 2-2, I have also made comments previously on other shows that I think the coaching in the NBA has kind of gotten to a point where it's nearly irrelevant, and not everybody, but like you look at rookie head coaches that can step in. You look at a Joe Mazzulla, who I really like. It's just I don't think he knows how to coach from certain aspects, and why we see teams maybe lose huge leads in this league almost consistently. Do we think that the coaching has impacted this series at all in any way, shape, or form?
Yeah, it's tough to tell. I mean, I think Rick Carlisle knows how to win with a pass-first point guard like Halliburton, as we saw in 2011 with Jason Kidd in Dallas. Mark Daigneault has been the one that's been tweaking the lineups. I mean, he's been shuffling Case and Wallace in for Isaiah Hartenstein to try to combat what Indy's doing.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. It's tough to say. I don't really have a super strong opinion either way. I do think that Carlisle is probably a little bit better of an X's and O's kind of a guy. I mean, when you have a talent like Halliburton, you can't just like let him run wild, but he's able to harness him in ways that still lead to awesome opportunities for people on the floor with him. So I think the edge will go to Carlisle a little bit. Just body language wise, he just seems like he gets it. I think Daigneault he's still trying to figure it out a little bit. I'm not saying he's in over his head, but he just doesn't have the experience that Carlisle does at this point.
Yeah. Dan, what do you think?
Rick Carlisle is a championship coach. He knows what it takes to get into the end zone. And I don't have a super strong opinion either way, but I mean, Rick Carlisle's done there before. He's got to the promised land with an underdog team. So yeah, I definitely think the coaching edge goes to Indiana. Plus, Daigneault looks like Andy Dismaris, so cut that out.
A little bit.
Cut that out.
I looked at Rick Carlisle and his experience, and I thought, okay, if it's going to come down to coaching and making adjustments, Carlisle's going to know what to do, and Mark Daigneault won't necessarily know. Not being in the situation again, I don't believe he's in over his head either. But I've seen some instances where I think that the Pacers are making adjustments and everything else. Game 3, when the Pacers came back and won, talking to the SGA about being worn out and everything else like that, looking at the bench scoring 18 points total for the Thunder and stuff like that, it just didn't seem like he was able to find what worked, and maybe that was just the game plan. And again, the NBA is so up and down game to game. You're going to have a guy that could shoot the lights out one game, the very next game do nothing. So, I mean, maybe it's something like that, but I thought coaching was kind of out of all of this, and now all of a sudden, hey, we're kind of seeing these little moves that are kind of affecting a game. But that's just me. If you had to pick an MVP right now, who would it be and why? Who's been the MVP 4 games into this series?
I still think it's SGA. But let's not kid ourselves here. I mean, he has the most two-way impact on the floor. You can count on him to generate something at the end of games. He's the best in the league right now at drawing contact and getting to the free throw line. No matter how much you hate that aspect of his game, he's incredibly good at it. Halliburton looked incredibly savvy on offense, just mediocre on defense. SGA is, he's showing why he's been the MVP of the regular season, even 4 games in, and he's not even playing like that great. Last night he had 0 assists last night, but he found other ways to impact the game. Lived at the free throw line, still had over 30 points. So he knows what it takes to win, and has more ways to do it than Halliburton does.
Yeah, it's SGA all day. I mean, he's putting up well over 30 points at shooting 50%. I mean, even with the inconsistencies, the lack of closing out some certain games, it's SGA. I mean, devil's advocate, you want to put someone from Indiana. It's going to be Siakam. He's only getting 30 minutes, but he's putting up 18, 8, 4, 2, and 1. Shooting a great percentage. So Siakam's the definition of consistency. He's not the number one guy you want to have on your team. But if it does go Indiana's way, which I don't think it will, I think you got to look at Siakam.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Yeah, I think those are the two. I mean, does SGA's form of play bother you guys at all? The foul baiting or anything else like that?
It's not the most aesthetically pleasing type of skill, but I can't deny how good he is at it. So I wouldn't say it bothers me. I mean, he's just so crafty that sometimes the defender has no choice but to foul him, because he just gets wherever he wants in the paint. Right? He's just so good at getting there. I think there's less baiting than peak James Harden did in Houston, right? I think he's not nearly at that kind of annoying level. It just kind of is what it is. It's part of his game. He's super good at it. I can't really fault him for it. But yeah, it's not the most fun to watch sometimes when, a 2.5 hour game gets dragged out to 3 hours because we're just watching, each team shoot 40 free throws. But, it is what it is.
Hey, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think he's getting the calls. I think that in the finals they're letting a lot go because I don't know what is he attempting, like eight a game or something, like in the finals, and fans really need to pick their poison. If he's going to be, people criticize other players for launching threes all game. Well, SGA is going to walk you down and get into the 15-foot range, and that's where he scores. So, I mean, pick your poison. What do you want to complain about? I don't have a problem with it. Like Ian said, it's not the sexiest game to watch all the time, but he's the best in the game at it. Top scorer for a reason, so no problem with that at all.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously one of those things that we're used to it, like Ian had mentioned with James Harden, always finding a way to kind of get to the free throw line. And again, you're trying to get points for your team. I mean, it's part of the game. It's part of it. If it's not something you want to see that often, then don't follow him and stuff. As far as some of the game last night, there were a few calls in there that, okay, he's getting a little bump here, a little bump there. All right, they're calling it. He's going to the line. But, I mean, you're going to find that most of the time. But there was a clear push-off by him at one point in the fourth quarter that, all right, they let go. Again, it kind of evens itself out. I don't think I've seen any egregious officiating or anything else like that. But
no, I'd agree. I think it's pretty even as far as officiating goes. I think they're being pretty consistent. But they've done a good job.
Now, we had kind of touched on earlier the roster building in the future and stuff like that, and you guys have given your opinion on that. Is there anything that you think with these teams, obviously drafting is probably going to be more important and everything else, but are we seeing the end of shelling out a ton of money or a ton of capital for a Kevin Durant or any one of those one players that it's obvious that they need some sort of other piece? Like Kevin Durant's great. He's always been great, but he clearly is not a one player team. Like he can't do it by himself, especially now at 30. He'll be 37 in the beginning of next year.
Yeah, I still think that, top end talent wins you championships. This Indy team is, I mean, they're almost like 04 Pistons level as far as like just a lot of solid players and no superstars. I mean, they're almost at that level where it's just such an anomaly. I think there will always be teams that will spend a ton, go into the luxury tax to acquire players that are top 10 in the league, right? That can score from anywhere, do whatever they want. That's never going to change teams from shelling out, hundreds of millions of dollars for these kind of players. There's only so many of those types of players in the league. And if you have one, that's an advantage that no other team does. And look, these contracts at the top end, like they're all kind of homogenous, right? Like there's like the top contract in the league is going to be the same for a Jaylen Brown versus a Luka Doncic, right? Like there's only so much you can offer a player for a contract. Like it's essentially capped at some point, right? As a percentage of each team's salary cap. But the level of player that get those contracts still varies quite a bit, right? Mm-hmm. Jaylen Brown's nowhere near a Luka Doncic, but Luka's going to get, roughly the same contract when he comes up for an extension, right? So when you get that top end, you just have to pay them that money, and it's a no-brainer to do it.
Yeah, I think another thing to consider, though, is we're analyzing all this from the perspective of a fan. I think there's so much more to it than that. I mean, the Knicks, I think we can all agree that they overachieved this year, right? They overachieved this year. Great teamwork, great coaching. It's a story for later. But with that core, why would you do anything with that core when you just made it to the Eastern Conference Finals? Now we're hearing all this talk about shelling out some core pieces of that team for Kevin Durant. Do you think that's going to is their incentive to win a championship this year by doing so? No. They're trying to get attention. They're trying to sell tickets. This is a business, so you should follow the money. I know as a fan, you're thinking, what are they thinking? Bringing in 37-year-old Kevin Durant, they're going to get rid of all these core pieces, whatever it may be, OG or Cat. It's we would love to think that that's all because they're going to play for a championship, but there's so much more to it. The business.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I'll just go on the record and say that nobody today should be paying big bucks to a 37-year-old Kevin Durant. Like, that's just my opinion. Like, yeah, can he still score from anywhere? Sure. Is he anywhere near the level of defender he was a decade ago? Absolutely not. Right? Like, he's kind of a one-dimensional player at this point, and he's just kind of a hired gun. He's a mercenary, right? He just goes wherever he wants, scores a bunch. Do they win? Not really anymore. So, I mean, that's kind of an aside, but yeah, no, I agree with your point on it being a business. But look, all I was saying was that no one's going to forego signing superstars to just sign a bunch of, tier 2 type player or tier 3 type players and then just hope for some kind of awesome chemistry experiment, right? You're always going to go for the top end talent.
I can still remember the player that got a certain contract, and I went, well, this NBA contracts are getting way out of hand. And I can tell you who the player is if you'd like, and you can tell me if you remember.
Please do.
Eton Thomas.
Wow, that's a wow.
He got
Syracuse?
Yeah. So he played for Dallas. He was drafted by Dallas. He played for the Wizards for a while, and then he went to Minnesota for a little bit. And then he went to OKC in the 09-10 season, and they gave him $7.3 million, and he averaged 5 points a game for his career. And I'm looking on Basketball Reference, and for that season, he averaged 8.4 points. Oh, no, that's per 36. Sorry, that's why it looks so good. Yeah, he played in 23 games that year. And I can remember getting that contract and seeing it pop up in ESPN. I'm like, these salaries are out of control. And that was the first guy I can vividly remember saying that.
Yeah, my first one was that center for the Sonics, Jerome James.
Yeah.
He had like one good playoff series, and they gave him like a 4-year, $50 million contract, and he was just like absolute trash. And I was like, this is getting crazy. What are we doing here?
I think mine, and this might surprise you because he was an elite player. He was an all-star, but it was just one of those moments where I said, what the hell are we doing here? When Gilbert Arenas, what was it, like $120 million in 08? Yeah. Like, that was mind-blowing to me. I was like, what direction are we going in here?
Yeah, I think it was like a 6-year 120, and that was after his knee surgeries.
Correct. Yeah.
Absolutely insane.
Wild.
Let's see.
Anyway, Tapa, bring us back to the topic here.
We'll bring it back. So I mean, roster building and stuff like that. Obviously, looking at top end. So let's go into the Celtics a little bit, since we're all kind of Celtics fans and everything else like that. Obviously, not the year that they wanted it to be. We look at the Knicks beating them and the celebration that they did and everything else, and now the Knicks are in a precarious position, if you will, and we'll get into them a little bit later. But what do you think the Celtics are going to do this offseason? Obviously, new management's coming in, new ownership, I should say, and they are vastly over the second apron with the current construct of their roster. What do you think they're going to have to do this offseason, or what would you like them to do this offseason?
Ian, this is you. I'm dying to hear your perspective on this.
Okay, I'm kind of a doomsday, point of view on this topic. Look, okay, I'll start with what I think they'll do. I think they will trade Holiday almost as a salary dump, right? I mean, we saw a noticeable drop-off in his performance this year relative to the 2024 title season. He can still be an impact player, but I mean, I don't know what happened to the three-point shooting. He went from like 44% to 36% or something like that. He's a step slow. Him and his contract are going to have to go. I wouldn't be surprised if they trade Porzingis and at least try to get something back for him. I don't know if both will be traded. Definitely one. It's probably going to be Holiday. But I wouldn't mind if Porzingis got traded. I mean, he's kind of made of glass, as we've seen in the last couple of years. So that's what I think will happen. I don't know what we would get for either of them. You kind of have to assume very little at this point. just so I think the main goal this summer is to get out of the second apron, and just kind of get away from those penalties that start to impact not only financial constraints, but just team building constraints as well.
Yep.
If you want my doomsday kind of what I wouldn't mind seeing from this summer, I think Houston has more assets than they know what to do with. I think they are a prime trade candidate for someone, and it might as well be us. And look, I'm just going to go on the record. I think this should just be a gap year, right? I think we should just do what Golden State did when Steph and Clay went down and when KD left. They just kind of punted the entire 2019-2020 season. They won like 15 games. They got number 2 pick, which we won't really talk about what happened with James Weissman, but that's, regardless. They got a number 2 pick. They did a sign and trade with Durant to Brooklyn, and they got back D'Angelo Russell. They flipped Russell halfway through that season for Andrew Wiggins, right? And then that's kind of how you rebuild your core, and that's how when Steph and Clay got healthy and Draymond was still there, like there's your championship team, right? I would not mind, and it pains me to say this. I love Jaylen Brown. I just don't know if him and that massive contract is worth it. From a pure numbers perspective, I just don't see him worth that kind of money. And I think Houston I think they have money to spend. They clearly need an upgrade at shooting guard. I would not mind trading him to Houston. And I know I'm going to get crucified for this, but for maybe Jalen Green, Tari Eason, and maybe some other asset. I think Jalen Green is super talented. I think Ime Udoka is not the type of coach to harness that talent. I think someone younger, more player-oriented, like a Joe Mazzulla, could actually get a lot more out of Jalen Green than Ime Udoka can. That's kind of my dark horse. I kind of want them to do that trade. That's my perspective. But you guys can burn me at the stake if you want for that comment. I get it.
Dan, what do you think?
I don't disagree with your wants and predictions there. Now, I'm much more optimistic about shelling out Porzingis and Holiday. I think as Boston fans, we're watching all 82 games. It's clear that we're frustrated with Porzingis' health and Holiday's poor shooting. However, I think there's still plenty of GMs in the league that will still be seduced by Boston's success on those two guys. I don't think their stock's as low as you're thinking it is. So hopeful that we can get some young talent there. Now, as far as pessimism, that's going to be geared towards Jaylen Brown for the same reasons that you outlined there. It's what I'm curious about, and I would love to get your perspective, is he going to be untouchable, given the fact that Tatum is basically a wash this year? I mean, if he comes back before the playoffs, I think that's a win. And here, you may burn me at the stake here because this is a wild take, but I'm the first to admit I don't do a lot of reading on the insides and outs and the rumors. I'm completely a blank canvas here, completely blank. But Jaylen Brown, I know his contract's out of control, but Giannis is potentially on the trading block as well. Tatum's out for the entire year. I am so ignorant as far as what the trade rumors go. Is there anything there? Do you see a potential deal where or any world where we're willing to dangle Jaylen Brown and some other assets out there for a Giannis or someone of that caliber?
I could see it. Now, from my perspective, and I'm going to throw this out there, I have some sources being, all up in the media now and everything else like that. Big shot over here. But there's a couple of things I have heard. One is that Porzingis has zero value to anybody. They've called around, they've asked, they're going to have to package him with picks to get him off of this roster. It's the way it's going to have to go just because of his injury history. Now, he's still 29, but again, he doesn't play a full season. He hasn't played a full season in years. And look at the last two playoffs where he's been out multiple games, through both runs. I think if this team is going to do something, it has to be done fully one way or the other. I think there are two options. One, you keep Jaylen Brown, you move whatever you can off the books, whichever way, get whatever sources you can, use your young guys. Now you're talking about, because I think they're going to move on from Sam Hauser because his contract balloons next year. I agree. I think that Peyton Pritchard can take over as your point guard. You're going to have to find pieces somewhere. But I think if you're doing this, you're looking at a 5-6 seed in the East, and then you're hoping that Tatum comes back and nobody wants to play you in the playoffs. You have the two pieces that are your main pieces that brought you a championship. Okay, you play them. Hey, you're one of those dangerous teams that come full stride for the playoffs. That also is the aspect
I can see that.
Yeah, I think Jaylen Brown, then you're trying to have him prove he can be a number one. And if he does do that, you have even more value next year for him with his contract and whatever. If you're going to blow it up and just be like, hey, wash, like Ian said, Golden State 2019-2020, just, hey, this is a season that is just, we're just here. Thanks for having us.
I think we're still a playoff team, I mean, correct?
That's where I was going, is that at the end of the day, the reason why I don't think there's going to be a Jaylen Brown trade is because the East is so bad right now that even if you had, assuming Jaylen's healthy and, I know he had a minor knee surgery to fix that partially torn meniscus a couple weeks ago, but if he's 100%, he's still in his prime. A Jaylen Brown, Derek White, Peyton Pritchard, and whatever you get in return for Holiday and Porzingis, assuming some development from guys like Baylor Shireman, Jordan Walsh, maybe Neemias Queta. If you get some development from those guys plus your core, I think you're still a 5 or a 6 seed because the East is just so bad, right? And you don't have to deal with the headache of a full teardown. You're still putting fans in seats. I think people would be upset if Jaylen Brown got traded. I don't blame them. So I don't think it's going to happen. I was just saying that's like kind of, if it happened, I would be upset, but I don't think it's likely. I think it's just getting rid of Holiday and Porzingis, seeing what we get in return, and just kind of building around the fringes.
Now they have the 28th pick and the 32nd pick. So they have, end of the first round picks that they can kind of find two players to fit in and be, cheaper options to come in, stuff like that. But yeah, I think the development of Jordan Walsh, Baylor Shireman, like you had mentioned, this is going to be their opportunity to play and give them either what they need or what they don't, and then they can either move on from whatever. But yeah, I think it's Hauser, I think it's Porzingis, Drew Holiday. All of those three guys are going to open up your salaries and stuff like that. You have J.D. Davison still. I think you bring back Luke Cornett as somebody that can give you some middle presence, and then you're filling in the gaps.
I think you have to. I mean, are we just gonna, are we in agreement that Horford is probably gonna retire?
I think so.
Yeah. So I mean, if you need another big, especially if you trade Porzingis. So yeah, I would agree bringing back Cornett if the price is right.
So where am I at? So with that, obviously if they do it one way or the other, and again, they do it completely. They don't go, hey, we're going to go into this halfway through the season. Hey, it's not working out how we thought. Now let's start trading people at the trade deadline, yada, yada, yada. I think you're looking at a 1-year rebuild, quote unquote, instead of trying to do multiple years. I think if you go halfway through it and you start just dishing off people, you're going to get lesser value for things. Obviously, people panic at the trade deadline too, but you can't bank on that. I thought it was interesting you said Houston, because I've said, at least recently, to people that Houston's that team that's young, but maybe a piece away, one piece here or there. And I think they're going to go out and try to fix that because they were the 2 seed in the West this year. They just didn't get through the first round. Now, that comes with time. Obviously, they had a great regular season, but it's on the same track that OKC kind of was the year before, which was they were kind of a piece away here or there. Now you see what they've become for this year. So I think Houston's definitely an interesting possibility. I think no matter what you do, you have to take Fred VanVleet back to make salaries work in some way, shape, or form. And again, he's still talented. Still a great point guard. It's just, is that who you want running the offense, or do you want, Peyton Pritchard to finally get his time, or whatever the case may be?
Yeah.
So we look at the New York Knicks, who beat the Boston Celtics in the playoffs this year and had an all-out parade for themselves. And Dan, you had said earlier that they had beaten their expectations and stuff like that, or they, I heard a lot of people in New York and stuff like that said that they still didn't meet expectations. Now, was that a reason for them moving on from Tom Thibodeau, do you think, or are we? Do we think that was a kind of a bad decision?
I think it was a terrible decision. I think it was incredibly unfair. I still stand by the Knicks completely overachieved this year. So, when they lose in the finals, days later, everyone's pointing fingers at each other, not knowing what to do, who to blame. And Tibbs gets let go, who's arguably top 10 coach in the league. He's a tough guy, holds his players accountable. So I think it's the curse of the franchise where there's no accountability ever. And they had to do something to keep people quiet, keep the fans quiet. And I just thought it was an incredibly unfair move. I don't know where they're going to go from here. I told you I don't do a whole lot of reading around the league, but I know they were going to maybe potentially try to target Jason Kidd, buy him out and bring him over. But I don't know what they're going to do. I think to just have to fire Tibbs, a coach like Tibbs, and have no plan is it's just New York Knicks.
Right.
It's right on brand for the Knicks.
Well,
so I don't know what they're going to do. But
that was my thought of, you've clearly already identified somebody. You're firing Tom Thibodeau. You've identified the guy that you want. And so they went to Ime Udoka. They went to the Rockets, asked for Udoka. They said no. They went to Jason Kidd. He was denied to interview. They went to Chris Finch in Minnesota. He was denied the interview. Quinn Snyder in Atlanta. And I believe Billy Donovan in Chicago.
Okay.
All of them told him no. And the somebody in the media the other day mentioned, this is like breaking up with your girlfriend and then going to your friends and saying, hey, can I date your girlfriend now? Like, it's the similar kind of like comparison. And
we've all been there, haven't we, gentlemen?
But it's one of those situations that, again, you're firing Tom Thibodeau after the best performance your team has put together in 25 years. And that means you have your guy. And even if he was a coach that was already hired somewhere, under contract somewhere, you would think that you would have that plan in place, like, oh, he's the guy. So now they're interviewing Mike Brown and Taylor Jenkins. Those are the two names, and I don't think either one of those are as exciting or as good as Tibbs, if I'm honest. But what do you guys think?
Yeah, I think Thibodeau has, like, he just has that, like, I'm in charge now type of energy about him. Kind of like a Doc Rivers does, right? Like, you bring in a Doc Rivers, like, he's clearly, like, he has this gravitas about him, right? And I think Tibbs has that. I don't know if Taylor Jenkins has that. I think Mike Brown definitely does not have that. And yeah, I think it's unfair. As Dan said, I think it's unfair that he was let go. This is like when, as an example of my useless basketball knowledge, this is like in I think it was 2013, when the Denver Nuggets had Andre Iguodala for that one season, and they won 57 games, and George Karl won Coach of the Year, and they fired him right after that.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah.
This is kind of ridiculous, but yeah, it's so on brand, as Dan said. It's just so on brand for a James Dolan-led team. It's just so dysfunctional. I guess my question to you guys is, do you think that, the firing, do you think this was pressure to kind of deal with the media and fan backlash of him, overplaying his players, the whole, like, very little rest, like 40 minutes a night kind of a thing? Is that a consequence here?
I think some of the consequence was, yes, he's known for overworking players. He's known for not utilizing his bench at the right times or right at all, whatever the case may be. And then weird lineups. Now, you're talking about the Knicks with Cat, who's a average defender at best, I guess, at this point. And then Brunson, who's not also a real stopper defensively. So they weren't playing him at the same time a lot of the times in the playoffs just because you couldn't stop anybody. So he kind of mixed some lineups and stuff like that. So I think some of that. I have a really off-the-wall prediction, or not prediction, but thought, is that James Dolan, over the last few years, had stepped away from kind of the Knicks day-to-day because he owns the Sphere in Las Vegas. I don't know if you guys knew that. So he's the owner of that. And as that was being built and opened, he was kind of preoccupied with that. And now that that's done, he doesn't really have anything better to do other than go back to the Knicks day-to-day operation. And we've seen in the past, with him involved, they're atrocious. So, I mean, I think that's part of the problem is James Dolan. But that's just me. And
he is the problem. He is the problem. He 100% is the problem. He's gonna remember when whatever it was, 2015. The Knicks are flat and stagnant, and he tells somebody, "Hey, why don't you go down to the beach in the Bahamas and wake up Phil Jackson and bring him up here? We'll give him a job. We'll make headlines and
we'll run the triangle."
Right.
Yeah, we'll run the triangle. With Eddie Curry at the head of it. So it's really just him. I guarantee it was something along these lines of him saying, "Hey, what are the reporters? What's ESPN saying about our failure here? It's Tibbs playing his players too much. That must be it. Let him go. Had they said anything else? It's Cats. Whatever. It's on brand for them.
But
completely clueless.
Look, I think but it's not just James Dolan. I think any time an owner gets that involved in personnel decisions, it is a disaster. Like, history has just repeated itself. Like, look what Matt Ishbia did in Phoenix, right? Like, he has put them in such a bad predicament. Look what was that? Mikhail Prokhorov with the Nets. Like, he's the one that pushed GM Billy King to make that horrific trade for an old ancient Pearson Garnett and give up all those unprotected picks, right?
They don't have a pick till 2062. Still,
when an owner gets involved, it just goes downhill so fast. Like, all they care about is winning that very next season, and they'll mortgage their entire future for it. So yeah, it's not just James Dolan, but he's probably the most visible, owner to, do this. It's easy to pick on him because he's always in the news.
Right. Do we think that if they hire let's say they hire either Mike Brown or Taylor Jenkins? Another thought that I had was Mark Jackson. And the only reason why I say that is Mark Jackson was kind of there to help the Warriors start and put pieces in place. He's a New York guy. He went to St. John's. He was Rookie of the Year for the Knicks. Again, not the greatest coach that we've seen, especially with the talent that he did have, but he has put pieces together. So let's say they hire one of those three guys or whatever. Do they still compete next year for a title?
No way. You could take pre-stroke Greg Popovich and put him there, and that team's not going to win any more than like maybe 2 more games than last year. Like, just structurally how that team was assembled, I just disagree with it. When you have your bookends, you have an undersized point guard in Jalen Brunson, can't really play defense. He gets exposed in the playoffs. You have a defensive sieve in Cat as your 5, and then you have 3 guys in the middle of that team that can't really create anything. Like, they need guys to create for them, right? Like, they need to be spoon-fed open threes in the corner. It's just structurally how that team is made. No coach is going to fix that team and get them to be some elite, finals contender.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I don't even think they're going to have a year next year as good as they had this year, unless over the summer Jalen Brunson grows 3 inches, or and I like what you said, bringing in Mark Jackson. I actually think he's a great coach. No comment on why he's not a coach in the NBA right now, because he should be. But no, the Knicks are. This was great for the city. Great for the New York City economy here, but it's not. It ain't happening next year.
So there's one other rumor going around about the Knicks and head coaching, and is that they've reached out to all these coaches they knew were going to be rejected for, because they're going to elevate Rick Brunson to be the head coach, which I also think is a nightmare scenario, where a lot of other New Yorkers that I've read, at least, that is a nightmare scenario for them. But it's one of those weird kind of coincidences that he's the assistant coach and he's there. Jalen's the star of the show now, and now all of a sudden, hey, we've tried these 5 guys. Nobody will let us interview them. We don't, we need to hire somebody. So I have a bad feeling that may be a back burner option for them, which I think is also a disaster. So that's all the happenstance that I've listened to. So
why don't we get Al Pacino to coach, or Robert De Niro? Let's go that route.
Al Pacino did a great job in Any Given Sunday. Okay, he can coach football, he can coach basketball. So NBA style nowadays, kind of the state of the NBA. We've mentioned it a little bit in talking today, but a lot of 3-pointers, not a ton of defense a lot of the times. Coaches, even from my perspective, seem to be a little irrelevant at times. What do you like about this style of NBA comparative to what we watched growing up, and what do you dislike?
Okay. I have a few things. I don't want to steal Dan's thunder here, so I'll just do one of each. One thing I do like is that it makes games more unpredictable. When a team just gets hot from 3, I mean, they can come back from a 12, 13, 14-point deficit in a minute and a half, and all of a sudden it's a Holderman game, right? Before the era of voluminous 3-point shooting, you just didn't see that. So I think it's fun that no game is safe now when you're getting toward crunch time. Crazy things happen. That's one thing I do like. As far as one thing I don't like, I'd say it's kind of made all NBA offenses pretty predictable. It always seems to be like a high screen and roll with, the team's best playmaker up top. And they try to just, collapse the defense, swing the ball out to a 3-point shooter somewhere. It seems like that's like every offense. So, I mean, some teams are more creative and they do some funky things. But yeah, I just think it's a little predictable, which is a little unfortunate, but, is what it is.
Yeah, I agree with all those points. I think things that I love about the new style, I call it new style, but current play style of the NBA, is the speed. The speed of the game. It's compared to when I was watching as a kid, it feels like you're almost watching a hockey game, how quickly these teams are going up and down the floor. I think also a great thing is the implementation of defense now being like a specialty skill that can get guys $100 million contracts, where before it was a prerequisite. You need to play defense as a wing or whatever. It's a specialty skill. I mean, look at guys like we're watching the finals. TJ McConnell, he's not the greatest defender in the world, but he picks up full court every single time, trying to slow the game down, trying to create headaches offensively. And so I think those things are great. It makes the game more fun to watch. Nobody's going to disagree there. Things that I don't like are the unpredictability. I understand the unpredictability is great. You can't turn a game off with 2 minutes left, no matter the spread. But the unpredictability could also result in teams chucking 83s up each, and when no one's hitting, that's a tough game to watch. It really, really is. So it's good and bad. As I get older, I've come to realize that the game isn't worse. It's just changed, and it's not. There's always positive things from a fan standpoint you can take out of it. It's frustrating when the teams aren't hitting those threes, but game's changed, and I'll always love the game no matter what.
Yeah, I can't stand the consistency that 20-point leads are blown. Oop. I muted myself for a second. Oops. So I can't stand the 20-point leads that get blown on a consistent basis. And it's frustrating, especially when you watch the Celtics do it back-to-back games in the playoffs. That obviously brings the frustration right to the top. But it seems as if we're getting away from the stuff that we're used to. Like I watched Winning Time with Reggie Miller, the Winning Time Reggie Miller story about him playing the Knicks just before the series started, and to see the physicality and everything else that was in that game or in the NBA at that time has seemed to have gone away. And look, the flashiness and the quickness and the ability to come back from those deficits is all well and good. Like you said, you can't turn it off with 2 minutes left because there's still time for somebody to do all these great things. It's just, especially as a fan of these teams, your team goes up 20, you got to ice that game. You got that's a win. You have to win that game. And then when you don't, it's just like, come on, like we're not teaching how to coach from up 20 anymore. Like, hey, just go out and keep doing what you're doing. Shoot threes until you can't possibly jump anymore. So I think that's the frustrating part of it for me is there's no continuity of switching your game up a little bit. You nobody runs clock, nobody runs this, and I get it. The more shots you put up, the more chances that you have to score. Offensive efficiency. I believe the worst offensive efficiency team from these years were better than Jordan's Bulls.
That's probably correct.
Yeah. So the worst team now is still better off efficiency wise on the offensive end than Jordan and all those teams that were great back then, just because of the way they play. But sometimes it's hard to watch when you're watching the same product, no matter if you're up 20, down 20, tie game, 2 minutes, start of the second half, whatever it is. It looks all the same. Now, it's amazing to watch. These athletes are phenomenal. These are the best players in the world. And crazy things happen, and it adds to the kind of news and stuff like that. But that's that. So that's my perspective. So I don't know if that. Again, it is what it is. I will always love the game, like you said. I'll always keep watching. It's just one of those things that you're watching the same product no matter what situation. It doesn't seem like there's a coach situation anymore, or anything else like that.
Yeah, I think there's less of an emphasis on X's and O's now. It's just more of, can we get a decent look at a three, because that's the best expected, point per shot. And so we're just going to keep doing that, right? And we're going to trust the math, like a lot of teams do that. We were like the poster child of that, right? Mm-hmm. Celtics being poster child of that concept. But yeah, it takes a little, bit of the ingenuity out of the game. I think it does make coaching a bit less important. So yeah, I'd agree with you. All good points.
So NBA draft, as we've kind of mentioned, Mavs get the first pick, whether you believe they did or not. It again seems weird that the Mavs would get the number one pick after trading a generational talent to the Lakers, but Cooper Flagg is essentially a Mav. What can we expect from him on that team, surrounded by Kyrie, free agent? I believe Kyrie is a free agent. I'll have to double check that. But and then Anthony Davis on the team. So, I mean, does that put the Mavs back in a place where they should be? And obviously, they were at the cusp of the playoffs. They got in the play-in round or whatever. They played one of the play-in rounds. But do we see them competing for a title anytime soon with Cooper Flagg essentially on their team?
No, it's not going to put him there. Cooper Flagg, I love the hype. I think he's an amazing player. I don't know if I'd go as far to say he's a generational talent, but what's going to work in their favor is that he's going to have some amazing mentorship. Stepping right into a team with Anthony Davis, a vet superstar, Kyrie. So he's going to be led really, really well. He's with a championship caliber team, that's for sure. But I don't think it's going to make them better right away. I still think they're going to struggle. But I'm definitely interested to see. He's going to get minutes, which is going to be exciting. He just needs to live up to the hype. So is it going to make the Mavericks get there this year? No. But he's in a prime position to get better faster. So I'm really curious to see what he's going to end up doing, 2, 3, 4 years in.
Kyrie.
Yeah,
Irving,
I think
Kyrie Irving is a free agent this year, just so we're clear.
He is. Okay.
Yeah. Look, I think people that are expecting him to come in and just be like this Jason Tatum, Carmelo Anthony type of player are going to be a little disappointed. I don't think he's that type of scoring talent. I think he's much more Scottie Pippen than he is or Carmelo or a Jason Tatum. I think he's a great defensive player, both individually and within a team concept, and he has some serious playmaking chops. I think if we're assuming that Kyrie isn't coming back until January, February, I don't know what other moves the Mavs are going to make this summer, but they should just run the offense through him. I mean, he became Duke's best playmaker as the season went on. I mean, he was a better playmaker than Proctor was on Duke. So I think you kind of give him the ball. Look, they're kind of playing with house money, right? They're not expected to really, win until Kyrie comes back. And so I think you just give him the ball and kind of see what he can make of it. I do think he's kind of this playmaking, defensive-oriented forward that is going to help. I don't know what kind of a win impact he's going to have right away, as Dan said. But and I also agree, I don't think he's a generational talent. I think his numbers at Duke would tell you that he is as far as advanced stats go. But, and maybe there's just a definitional difference of how we kind of define generational talent. But like, he's a very good player. I don't know if he's ever going to be a 25-point per game, number one scoring option kind of a player. But he's very talented. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I with the way the Mavs kind of blew up the team and got rid of Luka and stuff like that, all right, cool, you bring in Cooper Flag, but I don't think you can put him. I don't think he'll ever be Luka Doncic as a whole, no matter how long he plays it. And again, that's just my opinion. I just don't think he's going to get to that level. So is he a piece that if you had the two others, they're competing? Sure. I mean, I think that he can come in and play in the NBA and be a serviceable starter, at least at kind of his base, I guess. But that's just, again, we'll see what happens.
Do you have a player comparison for him? I've heard a lot, in regards to Cooper, but do you guys have a comparison, the play style and potential success of where he's going to reach, where his ceiling will be?
It's a great question. Yeah, I think he's more of a, like Ian said, more of a Pippen. I don't think he's necessarily. I think he can have those nights where he's the number one guy and hey, he plays really well. He's going to be an all-star, stuff like that. I don't think that he could be the number one on a championship team where your number two is like far and away, down the line as far as talent level. I don't think he's the superstar. I don't think he's the type of guy that could lead it, but put him next to somebody else with similar talent, it's going to make him look that much better.
Yeah, look, like today, like I think a good comp today, he's like a Pascal Siakam with Tatum's passing ability. I think that's kind of how you have to look at him, right? He can be a downhill scorer. He can facilitate, plays defense. He can be a serviceable scorer, but I don't think he's ever going to average 25 points a game.
You don't think so?
No, I think he tops out at like low 20s. But there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, if you're averaging 8 rebounds and 6 assists and stealing a block, and you play awesome defense, like I think you're worthy of the number one pick.
I think people have too high of expectations for him as a whole, but I think it's unfair to put a ceiling on him right now. I think his basement levels, health permitting, is going to be like a Keith Van Horn. I think his ceiling could be as high as like a KG.
Wow. Okay.
I mean, I could see it. I think it's all there. I just think there's some work to do. And again, here I am sitting in a loft commenting on what I think Cooper Flag can do. And I'm out of shape and everything else.
Oh, we're all eating our Doritos saying he sucks. But I think, I really do think, I try not to get caught up in the hype, but he has such a versatile skill set. I think he just turned 18. So health permitting, I really do think his ceiling is incredibly high.
Yeah. So the big question that I have for the two of you, and it'll be the last one we have before we get going, is who wins the NBA Finals now? What's going to happen?
OKC's going to win. Look, I always thought their 3-point shooting in the regular season was a little bit, overrated and not quite as good as it seemed. But they've shot really terribly from three in this series so far. I think that kind of number regresses back to the mean, and they shoot better for the next few games. Their defense is way better than Indy. I just think I think they win the next two, and it's over.
Yeah, I've been enjoying this series so much. I would absolutely love nothing more than to play devil's advocate and push for Indy, but I just don't see it. Just the consistency on the defensive end and Shea. I mean, this is him coming into his superstardom. I know we throw that word out a lot. We've said that word a lot in this conversation, but it's his time. I think OKC is going to wrap it up fairly quickly here.
So I've always said in a 7-game series, the better team always comes out on top. Asking yourself for an underdog to win 4 out of 7 games is a lot. That's why we love the NCAA tournament. We see the underdogs come out and in a 1-game, anything can happen types scenario. Some teams like that are going to come out on top. You're just going to have a better night. Basketball is one of those fickle games that they're either going in one night and not the next. So I still think it's OKC. I would love for this to go 7 just because it's been so entertaining. I think it probably will go 7. I think OKC comes back out and wins this game and puts the pressure on. Once that pressure's on, that you're 1 game away from elimination for the Pacers, we'll see kind of what they come up, because they've always been that team that they haven't lost back-to-back games since March. OKC hasn't lost back-to-back games since April. So, I mean, something's got to give at some point. It just depends on what it's going to be. Now, they could go OKC, Pacers, and OKC, and still nobody has lost back-to-back games. But, it's just one of those. We're at a situation now where something's got to give, and I think it's OKC. They're just better talent-wise, top to bottom.
Yep, agree.
100%.
All right, gentlemen, I've taken up quite a bit of your time today, and it was fantastic to get to talk to you. We'll have to do this again. Look at the draft. We'll look at all this different stuff. If you guys are more than willing to come back on, I'd love to have you back on. So I really appreciate your time. This has been phenomenal to do again. And for those of you out there that don't know, we've probably all known each other, 25 years, give or take, 30 years?
30.
Yeah.
It's crazy, bro. Crazy.
Yeah.
Well, I love the podcast, man. Top of your vault of sports knowledge is unmatched. But for the Hoops fans listening right now, comment if you want to have Ian come back, because Ian, nobody knows the game like Ian. I think you killed that, brother. I would definitely listen. If you came back on.
I appreciate it.
I'm sure somebody has said this to you, Ian, but I'm going to say it now. You sound like, especially when you're giving your analysis, you sound like Ryan Russillo.
I listen way too much to him. That's why. We should do this in call it mid-July after some of the free agency bonanza is over, so we can just comment on free agency stuff, draft stuff,
sure,
trades.
We can do all of that stuff. Trust me, it's with me just talking to myself up here. It's good to have other people that you can kind of bounce stuff off of. Because with myself, I'm always right when I talk to myself, so it doesn't matter. So, but I really appreciate it, guys.
Thanks, guys. This was
fun.
Can't wait to do it again.
All right.
Absolutely.
Have a good one, everybody.
Thanks, man. See ya,
guys.
And just like that, we go over quite a bit of NBA stuff with the finals, the Celtics, the Knicks, the state of the union of the NBA, and stuff like that. A big thank you for Dan and Ian for their time. And I hope everybody enjoyed that as much as we had fun recording it. So thank you, everybody. Again, you can visit us at www.loftsidebantr.com. That's loftsidebantr.com. Email address is always the same, loftsidebantr@gmail.com. We may be switching that up at some point in time to actually have a legitimate business email. A whole bunch of stuff is happening behind the scenes that I find myself in this loft trying to find new ways to get all this stuff crammed into one day. So, again, thank you for the support. No matter where you are, whether it's morning, noon, night, have a good one, and we'll see you for the next show.